Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India, India's voice to the world. I'm Mark Lin. Namaskar. Coming up in News Hour. Trump and Putin hold much anticipated phone call. Putin envoy Dmitriev says Russia is open for economic cooperation with the United States. India's External Affairs Minister Jaishankar calls for fair international order at Raisina Dialogue in New Delhi, criticizes outdated UN structure. Israel continues Gaza strikes, over 400 dead. White House confirms prior consultation. NASA astronaut Sunita Williams and Butch Wilmore are on their way back to Earth in SpaceX capsule after 9 months in space. US President Donald Trump held a phone call with the Russian President Vladimir Putin on Tuesday as Washington pushes for a ceasefire in Ukraine. Earlier, the Kremlin spokesperson said that talks will be about settling the Ukraine conflict and normalizing relations between Russia and the United States. Trump has already said that there are things on the table that perhaps weren't in the past, including the exchange of territory and access for Russia to certain resources in Ukraine. Last week, President Putin pushed back on a US brokered plan for an immediate ceasefire in Ukraine with a series of sweeping conditions. Since Trump's return to the White House in January, his new administration, they have sought to bring an end to Russia's war by berating and pressuring Kiev. Now, Trump, in fact, has repeatedly said that Ukraine President Zelensky does not have the cards to come out on top in negotiations. Meanwhile, Moscow has been offering normalization and hinting at territorial gains and sanctions relief. Now, Russia's Special Envoy on International Economic and Investment Cooperation, Kirill Dmitriev, he said that Russia sees big prospects to work with the United States, including in the space sector.
It is also very important that we see many opportunities for cooperation in the investment and economics. I have already mentioned that American companies have lost over $300 billion by leaving the Russian market. Many of them want to return to the Russian market, but of course it will be difficult to do so. Many areas are taken by our companies, and so of course some American companies will come back. But we see great prospects in creating joint ventures with Russian companies. We believe that many of the American companies that will be returning will only be able to return by creating joint ventures with Russian companies, with those companies that have already shown their success.
My colleague Amrit Pal Singh is following this story. He joins us now. Amrit, Putin had raised some questions earlier about the ceasefire. Most of them were regarding, who's going to enforce the ceasefire, how will it be enforced on over 2,000 kilometers. What developments have you tracked since then?
Putin's conditions were very clear that one, what you mentioned about who will monitor the ceasefire, whether it's effective, because he does not want any, either NATO or European and even American, any Western troops on ground in Ukraine. He does not want them at their doorstep. So he was very clear about that, be it whether about the coalition of the willing, which are France, Britain and Australia also had hinted. He is not amenable to that. He does not want any military, foreign military presence apart from the Ukrainian military in Ukraine, because he sees that as an affront to his security or the security of his country. Secondly, he's made it very clear that whatever territories he controls after the March 22 the gains that Russia made in Luhansk, in Donetsk, in Zaporozhye, in
Kherson.
Kherson. So he is not amenable to giving that away. Crimea he considers a part of the Russian territory. Ukraine also has some conditions about returning of soldiers and ensuring security guarantees, etc. But
Right.
I think Zelensky realizes that he's not in a position to negotiate, and therefore he's agreed to the 30-day ceasefire. Now, during this phone call, President Putin would have made his conditions very, very clear to the American president that if they are met, he is willing at some give and take to begin negotiations on the 30-day ceasefire. Mark.
Indeed, the rare earths deal also seems something that Russia is keen on. They want to also expand cooperation in space. One would presume that sanctions would need lifting first, isn't it?
Oh, that's right. Another very important condition of this is to release all the frozen assets to ease the sanctions against Russia, which both Europe and the Western countries, including the United States of America, have imposed. He wants them to go away. Donald Trump is amenable to that. He's hinted that easing the sanctions is on the table. Now, cooperation in space and in terms of resources is something which, again, are peripheral demands which can be met. The core of his demand is, I think he wants to control the territories.
Amrit, we don't seem to have much time, so very quickly also about Zelensky. He's currently in Finland. He's expected to meet defense industry representatives. What signal does this send?
Baltic states are keen on supporting Ukraine, but how far they'll be able to commit remains to be seen. I was today at the Raisina dialogue in Delhi, and I spoke with the Latvian foreign minister, and she was very critical of the Russian demands. The Baltic states, especially, and many European powers believe that there needs to be, for a permanent peace, there needs to be a kind of defense enforcement of the Ukrainian forces.
Right, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Amritpal Singh, and he's continuing to track that story for us. Moving on to our next story, at the Raisina dialogue, which Amrit was speaking about 2025, Dr. S. Jaishankar, he emphasized multipolarity and urged UN reforms to reflect current realities. He criticized also the outdated UN structure, citing Kashmir as an example, and highlighted India's tradition-based tactical skills. Akshay Dongre has more.
At the Raisina Dialogue 2025 in New Delhi, India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar delivered a powerful speech on the shifting tides of global geopolitics. With the theme of multipolarity at its core, he called for urgent reforms in the United Nations to reflect today's realities.
I think the idea of a multipolar world, and where India itself is concerned to think of how to become a leading power at some point of time. I think these are the global South character, the democratic character, the adapting long view aspect, and a multipolar world towards which we are working. I think if you keep these in mind, a lot of what we do in different situations would make sense.
The minister also spoke on how the structure of today's United Nations still lingers in the past.
I think we need, if to have an order, there must be fairness. We need a strong UN, but a strong UN requires a fair UN. A strong, a global order must have some basic consistency of standards. We have military coups to our east in Myanmar. They are no-no. We have them even more regularly to the west, where. They seem to be okay. So I think it's important to audit the working of the world for the last 8 decades.
He also raised how the invasion of Kashmir was portrayed as a dispute by the United Nations.
After the Second World War, the longest standing illegal, I would say, presence, occupation of a territory by another country pertains to India. what we saw in Kashmir. Now, we went to the UN. What was an invasion was made into a dispute. So the attacker and the victim were put on par. Who were the culpable parties? UK, Canada, Belgium, Australia, USA.
Dr. Jaishankar also highlighted how India developed certain tactical skills based on its traditions. With Akshay Dongre, Bureau Report for DD India.
And my colleague Jessica Taneja is joining us now with more on this. Jessica, people, peace, planet, that's the theme. Now, to what extent are peace and planet in focus at the discussions?
Well, quite a bit, Mark, and you've seen the discussions from various foreign ministers that I had earlier in the day and as well as towards later in the evening all seem to suggest that peace is what that they need to come down to, especially when we see conflicts around the world, not just in Ukraine but also in the Middle East. Now, there have been conversations around this, but also finding India's crucial role in the world geopolitics and also how geoeconomics would progress in the future. You heard the address of the External Affairs Minister repeatedly calling for it, a change in the global order. And to quote him, he says, one of the lines that particularly did make quite a point was where he said, "It is important to audit the working of the world." Now, that is in complete, continuation with what we had heard from him even last year at the Raisina Dialogue, with all the other, heads of states as well as the academics as well as strategic thinkers had joined in. So, of course, even this year, the theme pretty much resonates. But also looking at where the piece is, where can we achieve that crucial aspect and where India can come in and help broker it.
Raisina Dialogue, India's Minister for Electronics and Information Technology, Ashwini Vaishnav, he also spoke. Let's listen to what he said.
Stanford University ranks India as the biggest talent concentration in terms of AI. Every country needs the talent. Second, the diversity that we have, the kind of rich data we have, that would be one of the greatest resource for any country which wants to be in the race of AI. Two. Third, the way we have developed our relationship with the US, where the foundation of the relationship is trust. The foundation of the relationship is respect for IP rights. The foundation of relationship is to co-create and co-develop technologies.
He was speaking about India's role in the global AI race and vast talent pool. Now, on the sidelines of the Raisina Dialogue, Jessica Taneja caught up with Nepal's Minister for Foreign Affairs, Arzu Rana Dube.
You've been here at the Raisina Dialogue. What have been the key takeaways and your meetings throughout the day?
I think this has been a very interesting forum. A lot of new ideas have come up vis-a-vis climate change and how countries could perhaps meet the needs of adaptation and mitigation. The other thing is there was a very open and very frank discussion about geopolitics, and I think there was some learning on it to see what kind of things are happening in the world, and it's like very first-hand. It's not like just watching on a television show. And that also brings to a point that I felt good to be a South Asian, because this is a part of the world which is relatively quiet, and I think I hope there's going to be more harmony, and we will pull together on our way forward.
What more can we expect on the India-Nepal front?
I think for us the key is now power projects, but also increased connectivity would be something that both Nepal and India would benefit from, especially given our common heritage. There are a lot of people who would like to come and go for pilgrimage from both sides. And of course our trade, because we are India locked, most of our trade is with India, and we'd like to see that growing.
Still to come here on DD India News Hour. Donors pledge 5.8 billion euros in aid for Syria at the Brussels conference. Top diplomats from China, South Korea and Japan are going to meet in Tokyo this weekend. And there's a month-long state of emergency in the Peruvian capital, Lima. Geopolitics and trade deals. Economic challenges amid development. Hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy, always. Between walkers, money is what money does and says. Supply creates its own demand. Between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium. We'll get you centered with the economic brief at 8 p.m. every Thursday on DD India. Of India's Parliament, the Lok Sabha, on Tuesday, praising the success of Prayagraj's Mahakumbh. The Prime Minister said that in the Mahakumbh, all differences faded away, and it is India's great strength, showing that the spirit of unity is deeply rooted within us. Now, the second leg of the budget session of Parliament is underway.
महाकुंभ ऐसा आयोजन रहा जिसमें देश के हर क्षेत्र से, हर एक कोने से आए लोग एक हो गए। लोग अहम त्याग कर वयम के भाव से, मैं नहीं हम की भावना से प्रयागराज में जुटे। महाकुंभ में हमने देखा है कि वहां छोटे बड़े का कोई भेद नहीं था। ये भारत का बहुत बड़ा सामर्थ्य है। ये दिखाता है कि एकता का अद्भुत तत्व हमारे भीतर रचा बसा हुआ है। हमारी एकता का सामर्थ्य इतना है कि वो भेदने के सारे प्रयासों को भी भेद देता है।
The Lok Sabha approved a 252,000 crore rupee budget. That's around $29 billion for the Railway Ministry for 2025-26. The Union Railway Minister noted that India has the world's lowest rail fares, as well as he highlighted the growing railway exports to Europe, Australia, as well as Asia. Anil Thomas reports.
In the lower house of Parliament, Union Minister Ashwini Vaishnav addressed the demand for grants in the budget, emphasizing that Indian Railways is offering safe, quality services to passengers at highly affordable fares. The minister pointed out that railway fares in India are significantly lower than those in neighboring countries and much more affordable compared to Western countries where fares are 10 to 20 times higher.
रेलवे ने 2020 के बाद में पैसेंजर फेयर्स नहीं बढ़ाए हैं और 2020 से कांस्टेंट है। आज भी किसी भी पड़ोसी देशों से भी कंपैरिजन करें तो रेलवे का किराया बहुत कम है। मैं अगर यूरोप के देशों से कंपैरिजन नहीं कर रहा अभी, उसमें तो 20 गुना, 15 गुना, 10 गुना है। लेकिन केवल अगर हमारे पड़ोस के देशों के साथ कंपैरिजन करें तो भी एक 350 किलोमीटर की जो ट्रैवल होती है, भारत में जहां 121 रुपये है, पाकिस्तान में 436 रुपये, बांग्लादेश में 323 रुपये और श्रीलंका में 413 रुपये। मतलब अगर हम यूरोप से कंपेयर करें तो यूरोप में तो 5 गुना, 10 गुना, 15 गुना, 20 गुना होगा। इतना एक सब्सिडाइज्ड ट्रैवल भारत में होता है। ये बहुत बड़ी महत्वपूर्ण बात है।
This year, India has produced 1,400 locomotives, a number that surpasses the combined total production of the United States and Europe. The Union Minister proudly announced that Indian Railways is set to transport 1.6 billion tons of cargo, positioning it as one of the world's top 3 freight carriers alongside China and the United States.
लोकोमोटिव का प्रोडक्शन, इंजन का प्रोडक्शन 1400 पे पहुंच गया है, जो पूरा अमेरिका, पूरे यूरोप इन दोनों को जोड़ दे, उससे भी ज़्यादा है भारत का लोकोमोटिव का प्रोडक्शन। आज भारत विश्व के टॉप 3 लोडिंग कंट्रीज में कन्वर्ट हो रहा है। इस साल 1.6 बिलियन टन कार्गो रेलवे कैरी करेगा, जो कि अपने आप में एक इतिहास है, रिकॉर्ड है। और अब सिर्फ चाइना और यूएस और भारत ये टॉप 3 हो गए हैं। ये एक बहुत बड़ी उपलब्धि है देश की, और इसके लिए मैं माननीय अध्यक्ष महोदय, मैं सभी देशवासियों को और सभी सांसदों को और सभी रेलवे के कर्मचारियों को धन्यवाद देना चाहूँगा।
Amid disruptions by the opposition, the Union Railways Minister highlighted the global expansion of Indian Railways. The export of rail equipments has surged, with India now supplying essential components like propulsion systems and bogies to multiple European countries. Indian locomotives are being exported to nations such as Mozambique, Senegal, Sri Lanka, Myanmar and Bangladesh. Anil Thomas, DD India, New Delhi.
Days after a ceasefire was brokered, Israel has resumed airstrikes on Hamas targets in Gaza, killing more than 400 people. The Israeli military justifies the strikes as a response to Hamas's refusal to release hostages and a rejection of all ceasefire proposals. Meanwhile, Hamas has accused the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of overturning the agreement, putting prisoners in Gaza at risk. Let's look at this report.
West Asia ceasefire was shattered on Tuesday as Israel's military launched fresh airstrikes on Hamas targets, killing over 400 people in Gaza. The Israeli government says the renewed offensive is a direct response to Hamas's refusal to release hostages and its rejection of ceasefire proposals.
As of this morning, Israel is operating with full force against the Hamas terrorist organization in the Gaza Strip. We have reached this situation after the Hamas repeatedly refused proposal to extend ceasefire and to release our hostages.
In a statement, Hamas accused Israel of breaking the ceasefire agreement. The group claims that Netanyahu's government has chosen to escalate the conflict, exposing detainees in Gaza to an uncertain fate. Meanwhile, a White House spokesperson confirmed that Israel consulted the administration of US President Donald Trump on the strikes in Gaza. Speaking to Fox News, White House spokesperson said that discussions took place on Monday.
The Trump administration and the White House were consulted by the Israelis on their attacks in Gaza tonight. And as President Trump has made it clear, Hamas, the Houthis, Iran, all those who seek to terrorize not just Israel, but also the United States of America, will see a price to pay. All hell will break loose.
At the United Nations, Secretary General Antonio Guterres expressed shock over the escalation. A UN spokesperson described the strikes as devastating, adding that they have intensified an already dire humanitarian crisis in Gaza.
We are horrified by last night's Israeli airstrikes and shelling in Gaza, which killed hundreds, according to the Ministry of Health in the Strip. This will add tragedy onto the tragedy.
Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and several other nations have strongly condemned Israel's latest offensive. They have called for immediate de-escalation and urged all parties to return to negotiations to uphold the ceasefire. Amish Mahajan's report for DD India.
West Asia continues to be on the edge amid rising tensions between the United States and the Iran-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen. The US President Donald Trump has warned Iran of consequences if the Houthis' attacks they continue.
Yemen's Houthis have claimed their third attack on American warships in the last 48 hours. Shortly after US President Donald Trump warned that Iran will suffer the consequences for any attack by the rebels. Rejecting Trump's threats, the Tehran-backed rebels have said that escalation is likely as they are at war with US. Last week, US began a series of airstrikes on Houthi strongholds in Yemen, in response to the rebels' threat that they will resume attacks on ships in the Red Sea.
The initial wave of strikes hit over 30 targets at multiple locations, degrading a variety of Houthi capabilities. These included terrorist training sites, unmanned aerial vehicle infrastructure, weapons manufacturing capabilities, and weapons storage facilities. It also included a number of command and control centers, including a terrorist compound where we know several senior Houthi unmanned aerial vehicle experts were located.
Hamas's ally Houthis have claimed that they are targeting Israeli vessels. While the Red Sea trade route usually carries around 12% of world shipping traffic, Houthi attacks have forced many companies into costly detours around southern Africa. The escalating tensions between the US and Houthis have put Iran in a tough spot. Tehran has condemned US strikes while saying that Washington had no authority to dictate its foreign policy. The tensions come amid Trump's push to resume nuclear talks with Iran. In 2018, Trump pulled the US out of the Iran nuclear deal, citing non-compliance on Tehran's part. Iran could see a reduction in international sanctions if it chooses to return to the negotiating table. Bureau Report, DD, India.
Canada's inflation surged to 2.6% in February, a sharp rise from 1.9% in January, adding uncertainty to the country's economic outlook. Statistics Canada attributes the jump to broad-based price increases and the expiration of a tax break. Meanwhile, tensions with the United States continue to escalate as President Donald Trump imposes new tariffs on Canadian goods, with more levies expected next month. In response, Canada has enforced retaliatory tariffs, deepening the ongoing trade war between the two countries. The European Union led the way as donors on Monday pledged 5.8 billion euros in aid for Syria at a conference in Brussels. However, the donation was down on the 7.5 billion that was promised overall at the conference last year. The EU Commissioner for the Mediterranean, Dubravka Suia, has said that this money should be used for early recovery for the benefit of all Syrian citizens. The conference is the 9th Brussels conference and standing with Syria, meeting the need for a successful transition aimed at mobilizing international support for an inclusive, peaceful transition and to generate pledges for humanitarian and non-humanitarian assistance. The top diplomats of China, South Korea and Japan are going to meet in Tokyo this weekend. This is the first such meeting since 2023 that these countries are going to have. Now, the trilateral talks, in fact, they come as Seoul and Tokyo, they are both key allies of the United States. They are facing growing uncertainties in domestic politics over President Donald Trump's policies amid the intensifying rivalry between the United States and China.
At the meeting, the foreign minister of the three countries will evaluate the progress of trilateral cooperation since the 9th South Korea-Japan-China summit meeting held in May last year, and exchange view on the future development of trilateral cooperation and the regional and international situation.
Foreign Minister and member of the Political Bureau of the CPC Central Committee will attend the 11th China-Japan ROK Foreign Ministers meeting held in Tokyo, Japan on March 22nd. While in Japan, he will also co-chair the 6th China-Japan High-Level Economic Dialogue with the Japanese Foreign Minister.
Peru on Monday declared a month-long state of emergency in the capital Lima to allow for the deployment of soldiers to help police crack down after a wave of killings linked to extortion. The move came after the singer Paul Flores was shot dead on Sunday by hitmen who attacked a bus that he was riding with bandmates as they left a concert outside Lima. The musicians had been threatened by a criminal gang who attempted to extort money from them. Under the state of emergency that's in effect for Lima and its port of Callao, now the government can suspend civil liberties such as the right to assemble, they can conduct house searches. And the President, Dina Boluarte, has declared that after Flores' killings, and I'm quoting her now, "We will not allow one more death," she said. And she's also said that she's seriously considering reinstating the death penalty for hitmen and extortionists. Still to come here on DD India News Hour, we'll discuss External Affairs Minister Jaishankar's comments on a fair world order with an expert. Britain tightens the purse strings on health and disability benefits.
Complex issues, hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think all dots are linked. We just need to connect them. Join me every week as I connect the dots to unravel hidden designs in statecraft, mysteries, and decode issues that matter to you. Watch Connecting the Dots with me at these times on DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Mark Lynn. Here's a recap of our main stories. Trump and Putin hold much anticipated phone call. Putin's envoy Dmitriev says that Russia is open for economic cooperation with the United States. India's External Affairs Minister Jaishankar calls for fair international order at the Raisina Dialogue in New Delhi. He criticizes outdated UN structure. Israel continues Gaza strikes, over 400 dead. The White House confirms prior consultation. And going back to our story about India's External Affairs Minister Jaishankar calling for fair international order at the Raisina Dialogue. Joining us is Ambassador Mohan Kumar, former senior diplomat, who will help us understand this in greater context. Dr. Mohan Kumar, how does the shift to a multipolar world shake up things in a way, in the global system, especially in the UN?
Well, thank you very much for having me. I think what we are seeing is essentially the definitive end of the liberal international order as we know it. And that has happened, it's been happening for a while, but I would say the actions of President Trump have ensured that there is now no going back. I don't think we will go back to the old order. In its place, what I expect is to have a multipolar world order, as you rightly say. But I have to be honest, I think we are some distance away from settled multipolar world order. I'm only able to see the broad contours of it. It's not clear to me what shape it will eventually take. So that is where we are. This is a period of transition. This is a period of confusion. And it's also a period of jostling by middle powers and other powers for advantage.
Indeed. So the UN's outdated structure makes it harder to deal with today's challenges. That's pretty clear. But, does the UN realize that? Does the Cozy Club at the helm of affairs realize that? I think your first answer seems to indicate that's not the case, and you say that some way down the road before they do.
I think if you take the United Nations, I think there are well-meaning people in the United Nations Secretariat who I think believe the organization needs to be updated. It's just that they are completely powerless, I think, frankly. So if you're talking about the reform, more often than not, you will be talking about the reform of the Security Council. Now, why would anybody who has got a permanent membership and who has got a veto power give it up for lesser power and perhaps no veto power. So that is problem number one. It's like a club. So why would anybody allow, others to come in, which may dilute the clout that I have today? So that's problem number one. Problem number two, I think it is very clear that there has been a shift in terms of economic power. Globalization has been badly affected. Some people say globalization has been replaced by slowbalization and so on. So we are also in the middle of a world that is undergoing changes. And what the UN has done, I think, is by not reforming itself, the United Nations has done great disservice to itself and to the others, because right now nobody takes the UN seriously. I think that is what the Honorable External Affairs Minister hinted as well. And I would say largely the major players of the United Nations should take the blame for this state of affairs. There is no representation for the African continent. India doesn't have a seat in the high table. Germany, Japan doesn't have a seat at the high table. Europe is overrepresented. And Africa is, as I said, completely unrepresented. So it is, I think this point has been made ad nauseum by India, that the current composition of the United Nations Security Council is not reflective of the contemporary realities of today. This is something that happened in 1945, and we've just got stuck with it.
Dr. Mohan Kumar, given India's emergence as one of the poles in this multipolar order, how does that shape India's push, in fact, to bring about a fair, more inclusive global order?
So India is an emerging pole, frankly, Mark. I wouldn't say we have emerged, but I think you're quite right. We are definitely an emerging pole, and we bid fair to be an independent pole in a future multipolar world. And I think it is legitimate for India to ask the UN that, listen, what kind of a future do you have if you don't reform? So that is the point we've been making. But today's point by the External Affairs Minister was slightly different. I think he's also pointing out some substantive mistakes committed by the UN, not just the reform, the lack of reform, and the fact that the UN Security Council is not representative. He's actually going back to double standards by the UN.
Exactly. I mean, about the Kashmir example, in fact, that's a question I have in mind. The Kashmir example, it tells us about the UN's inconsistencies. But when it comes to that's about sovereignty and fairness and how they look at things. What extent can this be revisited? I mean, you talked about the possibilities. Can it be revisited?
Oh, I think at some point it must be. If the UN wants to regain credibility, it must look at all these things and see how you can recalibrate your positions. Nothing is cast in stone. Just because the UN took a position, just because the US, UK, Canada, and Britain took a position in 45, it doesn't mean they have to take the same position in 2025. That is precisely the minister's point. So much water is flown under the bridge, and we are still stuck to the same positions and so on. I also think India was a little naive in taking the issue to the UN, and he is right. The Honorable Minister is right. We expressed our confidence in the UN, and that confidence was betrayed in the case of Kashmir. That is part of the problem that India faces, actually.
Dr. Kumar, a final question. With the rise of the global south, also with new technologies, AI, in fact, all these things are changing the world, shaking things up in a sense. So do you see these changes calling for or automatically bringing about a fresh global perspective? And do you think that dialogues like the Raisina dialogue actually help?
I wish I could say yes. And unfortunately, there is no automaticity about these things. I certainly think the fora like the Raisina dialogue certainly help, in the sense that others will come to know about India's view. We can have a better understanding of where the problems are, what the views of other major partners that India has. All that is fine. But there is no automaticity that all this will translate into action next week. That's the problem. They come, they speak, and it's an excellent exchange of views, and then they go back to the capitals, sorry, and then nobody is able to bell the cat. That's the problem we have. But I would not underestimate the value of Raisina dialogue. I think it's fantastic to have these dialogues. But what I'm questioning is a direct link between this dialogue and action at the UN or action in multilateral fora. International relations and geopolitics is never straightforward like that. I think it requires years and years. It's a factor of whether India can persuade its partners, whether India acquires so much clout that it becomes unignorable. My best situation for India is that we should make our position so absolutely non-negotiable that the UN cannot afford to ignore our claims. That's the best way to go forward, I think.
We leave it there. Thank you very much, Ambassador Mohan Kumar, former senior diplomat. Thank you for putting those things into perspective for us. Moving on then, Britain's Labour government on Tuesday announced contested cuts to disability welfare payments, which will save the Treasury more than $6.5 billion by 2030. Now, as the government struggles with stagnant growth as well as high borrowing costs, Work and Pension Secretary Liz Kendall, she told Parliament that she was delivering a significant reform package to help disabled people go into the workplace. Now, Kendall's welfare reform, in fact, centers on narrowing eligibility for the Personal Independence Payment, that's called the PIP, and it's a benefit which is aimed at helping the disabled. Now, in Britain, 1 in every 10 people of working age, in fact, are people who are claiming at least one type of benefit, either health or disability. Let's take a look at other stories making the news. The Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Rafael Grossi, inaugurated the S.N. Bose building at the Global Center for Nuclear Energy Partnership at the Sushma Swaraj Bhavan in New Delhi on Tuesday. He also introduced the certificate course on nuclear engineering during this event. In a major breakthrough against smuggling, the Indian agencies, including the Anti-Terrorism Squad and the Directorate of Revenue Intelligence, unearthed a massive stash of 88 kgs of gold bars and 1.37 crore rupees of cash. This was during a raid in Ahmedabad. The 23rd edition of the bilateral naval exercise Varuna, which is a testament to the enduring maritime partnership between India and France, is set to take place from March 19 to 22. Since its inception in 2001, Varuna has evolved into a cornerstone of cooperation, showcasing the two nations' commitment to enhancing naval interoperability and operational synergy. Now, still to come here on DD India News Hour. Prime Minister Modi meets the Indian contingent that participated in the Special Olympics World Winter Games in Italy. New Zealand have beaten Pakistan once again in a T20 international. They're leading 2-0 now. And Bangladesh cricket team is going to tour Pakistan in the summer. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Mark Lynn. After being stranded in space for 9 months, Tuesday brought moments of cheer and joy for NASA astronaut Sunita Williams and Butch Wilmore as they began their journey back to Earth. And with this, their extended stay aboard the International Space Station came to an end. And they are now returning in a SpaceX capsule along with 2 other astronauts. The 4-person crew is scheduled for a splashdown of Florida's coast on Tuesday evening. Now, it was in June of last year, in fact, when the astronaut duo was launched into space as Starliner's first crew for what was expected to be an 8-day test mission. But issues with the Boeing spacecraft propulsion system led to a cascading delay and, in fact, several delays, and they are now returning home, thank God. Now, with the NASA astronauts all set to return to Earth from the International Space Station, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, too, on Tuesday has expressed his concern for the daughter of India. In a heartfelt letter sent to Sunita, Prime Minister Modi said that she reflects the pride of 1.4 billion Indians. He recalled a recent meeting with astronaut Mike Massimino, during which Sunita's name came up. The Prime Minister wrote this letter to Sunita wishing her strength and a safe return, and reaffirmed India's deep bonds with its illustrious daughter. The Indian-American astronaut Sunita Williams is set to return to Earth after spending 9 months in space. Her spacecraft will land off the coast of Florida on March 19. Meanwhile, in her native village in Gujarat, in Doordarshan, in Mehsana district, the prayers are being offered. Prayers are being offered for her safe return. Villagers have been praying continuously, offering prayers at a temple, and they are overjoyed that she's returning, and they hope that she visits again soon. DD India's Meghna Dev was there. She brings us this report.
People of Doordarshan village in the western Indian state of Gujarat take pride in the fact that this is the ancestral village of astronaut Sunita Williams, and they are continuously praying for her safe return. And we are here at the village goddess temple in Doordarshan village, and this is the temple of the village goddess, wherein there is an oil lamp which has been continuously burning since 9 months to pray for the safe return of Sunita Williams. So we are taking you here inside the temple and to show you the prayers that are going on continuously for her safe return. And obviously the temple priest has also been telling us that the prayers are continuously going on, so that and not in fact not in the temple, not only in the temple, but besides other temples of the village also there is chanting, there are havans, and also there is a lot of the number of prayers going on for her safe return. And while she's now on her way to return back, her spacecraft will be landing in Florida. So that definitely is something that the people here in the Doordarshan village of Gujarat are very excited about, and they're also praying so that she comes here, Sunita Williams comes here at this temple. Just as she came in 2007 and 2013, she had come here to pray at this village temple, and that's what the villagers are also expecting, that once she comes back on earth, she will definitely will be coming to pray at this temple where she has earlier also visited more than a couple of times. With camera person Lakshman Rajput, this is Meghna Dev for DD India from Doordarshan village, Mehsana, Gujarat.
You're watching DD India News. Our time now for the sports news. And India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi met with the Indian contingent that participated in the Special Olympics World Winter Games in Parliament on Tuesday. Prime Minister Modi congratulated the athletes on their achievements. They won 33 medals, including 8 gold medals, 18 silver medals and 7 bronze in Italy. Sharing pictures of them on social media platform X, the Prime Minister wrote, "I am immensely proud of our athletes who have brought glory to the nation at the Special Olympics World Winter Games held in Turin in Italy. Our incredible contingent has brought home 33 medals." Well, New Zealand beat Pakistan by 5 wickets in the second match of the 5-match T20 International Series on Tuesday, and this gives the Kiwis now a 2-0 lead. The home side had completed the chase with 11 balls to spare after Pakistan posted 135 for 9 in a rain-reduced 15-over match. The Kiwi bowlers Jacob Duffy and James Neesham and Ish Sodhi and Ben Sears took 2 wickets apiece. They reduced the visitors to a modest total. The openers Tim Seifert and Finn Allen gave New Zealand a good start. Seifert smashed the Pakistani bowlers all over the park before departing for 45. Seifert was adjudged the player of the match for his quick-fire innings, and New Zealand will now eye a series win when they take on Pakistan in the 3rd T20 International on Friday. And still with Pakistan cricket, now the Bangladesh cricket team is going to be touring Pakistan for a white ball series in May, which will include 3 T20 internationals and 3 ODIs. The series will be held after the conclusion of the 10th edition of the Pakistan Super League, which is scheduled to take place from April 11 to May 18. Originally, the series was part of the Future Tours program, but had to be postponed due to the busy schedules of both teams. Bangladesh had previously toured Pakistan last year for a 2-match test series, which they won comprehensively. They won 2-0. Lionel Messi has been ruled out of the Argentinian squad for the 2026 World Cup qualifiers in fact, this is because of a muscle strain. Messi scored a stunning goal in Inter Miami's 2-1 win against Atlanta United in the Major League Soccer on Sunday, but he felt a muscle discomfort, and as a result, the 37-year-old now was left out of the Argentinian squad on Monday. He's going to remain in the United States to recover. Argentina will lead the CONMEBOL qualifying standings with 25 points after 12 games. They're going to travel to the second-placed Uruguay on Friday and then host Brazil on March 25. Argentina, of course, are the world champions. Now, the chess grandmaster Magnus Carlsen, who was the world champion at one time, but he's world number 1 now, has officially ruled out the possibility of potential return to the World Chess Championship. Carlsen stated that he has nothing to prove and he feels that he's still better than the younger generation of chess players. But he has to test that. I don't know why he thinks he is better. Now, in 2022, the world number 1 Carlsen cited lack of motivation when he announced that he would not defend his title the following year. Last year, Carlsen won the Speed Chess Championship and shared the Blitz World Championship title with Russia's Ian Nepomniachtchi amid a dispute with FIDE following a dress code violation. Well, that's all we have in this edition of DD India News Hour, and you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. That app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code and download it now. Okay, we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Mark Lynn from all of us here in Delhi. Thank you very much for watching DD India News Hour. Namaskar.